Thank you, Senator Lee. Next up is Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Robinson, your testimony is really powerful on the issue not only of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, but also the threats of violence and hate crimes. And you describe this entire emergency as a result of a coordinated moral panic. The reference to this emergency is unprecedented in the 50 years of the Human Rights Campaign, which itself is noteworthy. I wonder if you could describe the links here that make it coordinated, that create the threat of violence, the feeling that this community is, to quote you, constantly under threat, and what relation it is to gun violence in particular at Pulse and Club Q. You refer to both of those. If you could just expound on your testimony a little bit in that regard.
Absolutely. And I think that, those real life examples of Pulse and Club Q show that this violent political rhetoric plus easy access to firearms equals real life harm, violence, death to my community. And while we're here talking about the issues that are truly affecting children, their health and their safety, the number one thing we should be talking about is gun violence. That is the number one killer of America's youth, but instead we are putting a target on the backs of trans kids. And when it comes to where this is coming from, we don't have to guess. I mean, the American Principles Project, their executive director said that they are targeting trans kids to, quote, score political points. And every time we see these waves of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation move through states, over 500 bills just this year, we see it accompanied by campaigns of hate and bias online. In Florida, when the Don't Say Gay or Trans bill was moving through, you saw a 400% increase in language of groomers online targeting the LGBTQ plus community. Let's be clear that this is instilling fear in people. This is perpetuating transphobia and homophobia that has real life impact on harm on the lives of my community.
Would you say that a lot of the rhetoric, the legislation, in a sense, gives license to the violence or encourages it implicitly, maybe without directly intending it, but nonetheless creates an atmosphere where the violence is more likely to flourish?
Absolutely. There was a speaker at CPAC that called for the quote-unquote eradication of transgender. That sort of violent language takes away the humanity of people that look like me, the people experience the world like me, LGBTQ plus people across this country. It makes us seem less human. When you couple that with trying to censor education, remove our stories from schools, trying to criminalize or vilify loving parents for affirming their gender identity, this is creating a culture of fear and harm that's directly targeted at some of our most vulnerable, the LGBTQ plus community and trans youth. We should all see what's happening for the moral crisis that it is and know that because the attack is coming to trans youth today doesn't mean that that target can't be placed on someone else's back next week. This is a threat not only for the trans community, but for us all.
I think that's a really important point, that we are all at risk of this violence if the LGBTQ plus community can be targeted in this way. Anyone can be targeted. Anyone who's different is at risk. And this community right now is the most vulnerable, but others can be targeted as well. Senator Hirono and I have helped to lead hate crimes legislation, which actually has taken as one of its principal causes to stop exactly this kind of violence. And so I want to thank you for your leadership and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kennedy.